the player sent off or sim-binned or something. You've got to take advantage of that power play, and that's what's going on at the moment. Gabriele Tarquini, last time out 2 weeks ago, Paul Ricard rather, had an absolute shocker of a weekend and has got 0 points to write home about. So he will be hoping to produce a little bit better. He was actually the fastest man in the testing session yesterday, the 30-minute test session. So indication that the Lada is still a quick car around here.
Yeah, absolutely. They did very well last year, I think.
Now, was Norby recording an onboard lap for us there? Those of you with good memories will remember that he was chatting away to us last year when he went off at the final corner. That's not the final corner. In fact, there's a gravel trap even I've not explored here.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange place to go off. I'm just trying to work out. Bringing a lot of gravel and debris back onto the track that'll please the other drivers.
Yeah, especially this early in the off.
Yeah, just going back to Lada, Martin, you know, last year I think it was the first time they got 2 cars into Q3. I think they qualified 4th and 5th on the grid, and it's going to be a weekend that they're going to be very confident coming into. But it's going to be very, very tight. I think with the weight, it will be very tight. I expect the Citroën to have a very good one-lap pace, but I think they may struggle come Sunday afternoon.
Well, Ted Bjerg, as you can see on board at the moment, fastest lap coming up. Fredrik Ekblom in the other Volvo, also going very quickly at the moment. Well, let's hear what Norby had to say for himself there.
There is no damage to the car. Feeling is okay, but I went through the gravel, so please check the floor.
Well, there you go. You know, these guys all know that with the advent of cameras and data, there is no hiding place. You can't just say, oh no, nothing went wrong there at all. Where's that 780 kind of?
Yeah, and although those offs look very innocent, you pick up a lot of gravel. You can get gravel stuck in the ducts for the brakes, for the radiator, get grass blocking up the radiator. Those innocent offs that the drivers don't like to actually tell the team about sometimes, they're the ones that can catch you out with sky-high engine temperatures a lap and a half later, so it's always best to come in.
Exactly, and the thing with all the aerodynamic flat floors is it's something that keeps all the gravel attached to the car, whereas with a normal road car it would all fall off because there's nothing underneath it to keep it there. With the flat floors in these cars there is, and as you say, you know, stones getting everywhere, and you want to get it checked over. You don't want a loose stone in the engine bay getting into a drive belt or, as you say, into a brake rotor or anything else.
Absolutely. So, certainly not in a free practice session.
No. In a race, you just have to get on with it. When it's free practice, you don't. I always say, you know, you put up with an awful lot more in a race than you ever would in a qualifying or a testing session, because you haven't got the option to go into the pits and get anything done about it normally.
No, absolutely. And like you said, with the aerodynamics underneath these cars, you know, the engineers have come up with all kinds of little gullies and ways for the air to go, but of course that means it's lots of nice hiding places for gravel. So, yeah, you can do a lot more damage than you realise.
Fredrik Ekblom and Ted Bjerg, first and second for Volvo at the moment. Nicky Katzberg third for Lada. Rob Huff fourth, ahead of Thiago Monteiro in their Hondas, and Ugo Valente in sixth position in his Lada. Have the Citroëns gone out on track? Yes, of course they have. You can see Pachito Lopez in seventh place. He is the fastest of the Citroëns at the moment. Tom Chilton, second fastest Citroën. He's in eighth, ahead of Ivan Muller, the other red and black factory Citroën, which has just moved down. Who just moved up?
Montero.
Yeah, Montero's popped into fifth place. So we've got, James Thompson, ninth place between Lopez and Chilton. So how many? That's his third lap, Tomo, in the car this morning. I mean, the RML built Chevrolet is a fantastically adaptable and manageable race car, but you know, when you've got just almost endless adjustment, it's very easy to head off down some avenue when you know, you need a couple of testing days just to get a feel for what the car does, and then you can start to try and tailor it to yourself. At the moment, James is just going to have to get on with what the car does.
Absolutely, and also in a race weekend, you become quite risk-averse because a lot of the changes that you want to make and you feel is the right direction, you know that if you've gone the wrong way, you've cost yourself an entire session. You know, for example, a diff change or something that's quite serious. you've then gone the wrong direction. So you become very risk averse. In a test away from a race weekend, you can make all those plays. When you're in a race weekend, you have to manage each session, and you've got to keep going forward, and therefore you become quite risk averse. It's going to be very difficult for James this weekend, having not tested the car, just jumping in. It's very, very difficult to get the car to your liking in such short track time.
Yeah, time is definitely your main ally at a race weekend, rather than necessarily the ultimate setup. I mean, you know, the other thing about it is that, having never driven the car before, he's not quite sure what the ultimate setup feels like. He's got a pretty decent idea of what he wants in a good front-wheel drive touring car, but whether you can achieve that or not remains to be seen. He is, however, the fastest of the Chevrolets. Next quickest would be John Philippi in 14th place. And where has Tom Coronel gone? No, Tom has just gone up to 9th place. In fact, Coronel is quicker. It's still Ekblom, Björk, Katzberg, Tarquini and Huff. And then Montero, Valente. So Lopez is still the best of the Citroens in 8th position. And one of the things about this track is it's got 2 or 3 quite quick sections, but there are an awful lot of turns, and 17 or 18 corners in this track. I mean, there's a couple very quick corners, and the really, really, really long one at the end of the lap, which is getting on for 270 degrees and tightens and tightens and tightens at the end. Just when your tyre is really giving up, you have to get it to turn more and more and more. And that's the one thing that the Citroen's tyres are going to hate most of all, right?
Absolutely. That's going to be really challenging for them come Sunday afternoon. I think they'll get the 1 lap pace for qualifying, but it's going to be a real challenge for them on Sunday afternoon. The other thing I think is that this circuit has so many long constant radius corners. It really rewards what I would call the old school drivers, the drivers that have been in front wheel drive cars for a long time, and that's people like Ivan Muller, Gabriele Tarquini. These guys, they've been driving front wheel drive cars forever, and that's where their experience is rewarded. Somewhere like Marrakesh, a single-seater driver can get in a touring car and get a good lap time. Here, it takes a lot of technique, and it's quite niche.
So looking here at Ted Björk, very Rickard Rydell helmet for obvious reasons, the Swedish yellow and blue. I would just kind of always think of Rickard when you see a livery like that. Recently retired Rickard Rydell. So Ted Björk currently second. Freddie Ekblom, his teammate, in the pit lane at the moment, but with the fastest lap of the session so far. And you can see on the timing pile on the left where the positions are. The best laps at the moment, Ekblom 2:05.42. Björk, his best was 2:05.73. And third fastest, Katzberg, 2:06.1. So the fastest of the Volvos, faster of the Volvos, I'll sub myself on air, 7/10 quicker than the third quickest car.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other things here, Martin, is that the difference between your qualifying setup and your race day setup is quite different, and therefore in free practice we might see some of the teams taking a different approach as to which session they're prioritising.
I would just kind of always think of Rickard when you see a livery like that. Recently retired Rickard Rydell. So Ted Björk currently second. Freddie Ekblom, his teammate, in the pit lane at the moment, but with the fastest lap of the session so far. And you can see on the timing pile on the left where the positions are. The best laps at the moment, Ekblom 2:05.42. Björk, his best was 2:05.73. And third fastest, Katzberg, 2:06.1. So the fastest of the Volvos, faster of the Volvos, I'll sub myself on air, 7/10 quicker than the third quickest car.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other things here, Martin, is that the difference between your qualifying setup and your race day setup is quite different, and therefore in free practice we might see some of the teams taking a different approach as to which session they're prioritising qualifying and which session they're prioritising the race.
So we've got the Volvos in the 2:05 group, first and second, then from Nicky Katzberg in third, down to Tom Coronel in 9th. They're all in the 2:06 margin, from 2:06.1 Katzberg to 2:06.8 for Coronel. Ivan Muller
You know, if these guys make a mistake, they get punished, and the experienced guys make less mistakes, and therefore they're more rewarded.
So, lap number 5 for Hugo Vallant has been disallowed, so he was clearly doing something, I suppose, exceeding track limits somewhere or other. But as you say, there's not too many places you want to do that without recourse to a recovery tractor. There's Hugo, and currently 8th fastest. With the changes to the way that the qualifying rules are applied, we could see quite an interesting dynamic this season. We didn't really see too much of it in Paul Ricard because the weather wasn't great leading up to qualifying and people still had a little bit of work to do, but also nobody was quite sure how the new dynamic would work. Essentially, up until now, if you're the fastest man in qualifying, you started the first race at the front. So the top 10 after qualifying would set the top 10 places on the grid, and all the other places would be set in the earlier bits of qualifying. In a change this year, the way it works is, instead of race 2 having the top 10 reversed, so 10th place is on pole, that now happens in the first race of the weekend. In the opening race, the man who qualifies 10th will start on pole, and the man with the fastest lap of all at the end of Q3 will be in 10th place. And that means that if you qualify on pole and get your 5 points, or in the top 2 or 3 spots, you've got a few points, but you have to wait until race 2 to really be able to capitalise. It used to be, start at the front, drive off, get a hatful of points, great, bingo, good weekend already. Anything else you get in race 2, it's a bonus. If you get in a bit of a tangle and it doesn't quite happen, okay, that's unfortunate, but you've at least had a good weekend already. This way round, the expected championship front runners, the guys with the absolute fastest qualifying laps, are going to have to work harder in race 1 to get points and keep the car in one piece. And the guys who are less likely to be able to be at the really sharp end in qualifying are probably going to focus even more on trying to be around that 9-10 margin and not in the 11-12 margin where you don't get any reverse grid bonus. So we could see 10 cars trying to be 10th and only 3 or 4 trying to be first.
Yeah, I don't think we'll quite see that, but you're absolutely right that some of the teams will know that they're not going to be in with a shout for pole, and therefore their best opportunity is to qualify the lower order of the top 10. I think it's really exciting though, because it means that the pole guy has to wait for his dessert, if you know what I mean. He's now got to really look after his car in race 1, because worst case scenario, it gets tangled up at the first corner in race 1, damages car to the point that it can't be repaired for race 2, and it's all wasted. Yeah. And I think that it'll keep the championship very interesting, because the guys at the sharp end can lose a lot of points very quickly.
Definitely right. Definitely right. And again, you say, well, it's not really fair, we've got the quickest car, we've got the quickest guy, why do you have to... Well, if he's that quick, get on with it, it's racing. It's not just called winning.
Sat in the TV chair now, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
If I was the team principal down there, I'd be thinking, my team's done the best weekend, the job possible. I've qualified on pole, and then it's all over at the first corner for both races. But
I agree. But
from the viewer's point of view, it's fantastic. It's really good.
But also, there's not a racing driver or a racing engineer who's not a racing fan, a fan of motor racing. And some of the greatest motor races have been because something has really jumbled up the status quo. Schumacher stalls his Ferrari on the grid in Japan, sent to the back, one of the great drives, and it gets wet in qualifying, and the grid is all over the shop. Always going to be a good race.
And we all love an underdog.
And we all love an underdog, and we all like to follow a story of somebody. Half the films, every film ever made, it's about human perseverance in some way or another, isn't it? That's what life is. Life is a struggle, and sport is a struggle as well. Sport is a struggle to be the best, and even when you are the best, there's no guarantee you're always the best, and that's the whole joy of it.
And that's why the regulations evolve every now and again, just to try and spice it up, because the teams, the drivers, they're all very good at circumnavigating what the rules are designed to do, and every now and again we have to despite it. I think it's a really, really good thing for this season. I think it's a very, very good addition.
I think so. It's certainly, I mean, all the new additions this year really, really worked in Paul Ricard, and hopefully that will be the same job here.
James Thompson looks like he's fighting a bit of understeer there. Looks like he can't get the front of the car to do exactly what he wants at the moment.
So then, as an engineer, are you looking at what the front is doing or looking at what the back is doing, or do you have to look at the whole package?
It's generally car balance, and you know, sometimes you'll actually take grip away from one end of the car almost to get that balance. You know, motorsport's always about the balance of the car, the compromise of the car to get the fastest lap time possible. And it just looks like James got a bit too much push in the car there. The car wants to run on going into the corner. He's struggling to get the car turned in. And every time you do that, you're constantly waiting to get through the corner. It's very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he'll be looking for now, is a bit more front-end grip.
Looking at Tom Coronel, who is in 10th place. Jimmy T down to 13th spot, as Ivan Muller has crept in front of him. Won't like that very much.
No.
Teammates for many years back in the UK, and so there's always that. Friendly teammates, but there's always that little bit of right. You perhaps judge yourself more against somebody you know really well than against somebody you don't know quite so well. So he'll, particularly against Ivan, who he knows he can beat in equal machinery.
I mean, I hear the stories of when they were teammates in BTCC, and Ivan was, let's say, a bit more weighty then than he is now, and he was under orders from the team to lose weight, and James Thompson spent his entire weekend trying to put muffins and cakes and sausages in front of Ivan, but that's all the good-natured joshing between teammates.
Exactly, exactly. A little bit of very innocent gamesmanship. Exactly right. Ivan is still very susceptible to a pastry.
He is indeed.
He really is. He's not carrying much success ballast. Having a young wife definitely makes a difference in that department. We can't stop getting old, but we can stop getting old and fat. That's definitely, and when you have to, and it's sort of hard to explain to people how physical. It's only driving a car. If you passed your test, you can do this. You can drive these cars. You can't drive them this fast. God knows you can't. But you can do this mechanically. Right, it's got a sequential shifter, which you'll get used to, but mechanically, your granny could drive this car.
I think it's also very much there, but I'll try to do a lap off because this is what we have for qualifying, then I need to practice try to do a lap.
So Rob clearly speaking to us from the Terrapin tank at his hotel there. And the microphone's a little close to his mouth inside the helmet. Was he saying, if this is what we've got for qualifying, I think we're all right, or I think we're in trouble? I couldn't quite make it out.
Didn't get it either, but let me just explain that kind of radio communication is exactly what the team will be getting. Yeah. The amount of times that you actually struggle to hear what the driver's trying to say on the radio, and Rob's actually quite relaxed on the radio, so he's even more sort of difficult to make out sometimes.
And which is why when you listen to, especially when you listen to Formula One radio communications, you hear things that you wouldn't hear normal people saying. Box, or box this lap, because you use a specific sound rather than, I say, oh boy, do you fancy popping into the pits?
Yeah.
Fairly simple. Use a specific short sound that even if it's basically crackle and all you hear the driver say is box, everybody scrambles like mad things, because it's, you can mishear other words. You're unlikely to mishear. I can't think of another word you're likely to hear a driver say that sounds like box. Oh, I've just hit a fox at the Nürburgring, but other than that, you're clear.
I think the other thing with radio communication as well, like really obvious things, don't use a double negative. Yeah. If you say the car's not too bad, all you might hear on the radio is the car is bad. So it's real simple stuff like that, but you'll be amazed at some of the stuff we've miscommunicated over the years, and let me assure you.
Frederick Ekblom, Chet Björk still fastest in their Volvos. A Volvo S60, brand new car in the championship this year. Polestar Cyan Racing, a kind of slightly new team. However, the Polestar guys were with us 3 or 4 years ago with their C30 at a handful of races. Nicky Katzberg third for Volvo, Gabriele Tarquini fourth for Volvo. There is the third Volvo, Ugo Valenti in 8th place.
I love watching Hugo. He really, really is an exciting driver to watch.
Very physical, isn't he?
Very much so. Really hustles the car, which isn't always the best, but I find him one of the most exciting drivers to watch.
And the thing is, you know, it might not be the best way, but it's the only way he knows. It's how he drives these cars. And again, you know, talking about trying to explain to fans how physical the cars are to drive is very hard. And trying to explain how somebody has a different driving style is very hard, because in a road car, almost nobody has a different driving style. You just drive a road car. This is very different.
Yeah, very different. And, you know, going back to the physicality of driving these cars, you know, sometimes these drivers are pulling a couple of G, which, you know, effectively means that you're weighing double. So, you know, if you imagine dancing on and off the pedals, imagine just doing a very, very soft jog on the spot, but weighing 2 times your actual body weight.
Yeah.
Then put a load of fireproof overalls on, then sit in a cabin temperature of like 50 degrees at some circuits, and then yeah, lift water bottles up and down and do that for an hour. You'll be pretty tired by the end of it. I
think the thing that you know, if you have an emergency stop on the road and you've got the ABS pulsing away and everything shooting off the parcel shelf and coming past your ears, you're pulling sort of about 0.5, maybe 0.6 G. These things under braking will approach 2G, a Formula 1 car close to 5G, so 10 times the severity of an emergency stop in a road car. A Formula 1 car will come from 180 miles an hour to a standstill in something around 75 metres, so less than the length of a motorway slip road.
And most of that is increased in Formula 1 by the downforce.
Yes.
So it's not just the braking capability of the physical brakes, but even these cars have a lot of downforce compared to your road car.
If you sat in one of these compared straight out of a road car with no prior experience and they drove you around here for 1 lap, you would be convinced as you went down to the first corner, long after you thought it was safe to brake, that they were actually just going to have a monumental crash.
Yeah, these guys will be taking another gear when you want to hit the brakes. Yeah. I can assure you of
and
that.
Then another gear, and then when you have closed your eyes and crossed yourself a couple of times, suddenly the thing will hit a brick wall, and then it'll turn into the corner, and it is quite the most disorientating thing. And it's really hard to express how much what they're doing driving is not what we do driving on the road.
No, absolutely not. Just watching Frederik Ekblom there, he's really, really focused this season. And, you just feel like he's been a bit of a journeyman in his career, and he's just taking this opportunity with both hands. He's really fired up. He does seem to be really, really on the pace so far.
Well, Frederik and Ted Bjerg, I mean, a good team pairing. I'm not sure how it's going to be if they end up, you know, having to race each other wheel to wheel constantly. They managed to do so quite successfully last year in the Swedish Championship and ended up contesting the title in the final race weekend. But yeah, you know, they were all quite wide-eyed and just excited in Paul Ricard in a very positive way, because, you know, for all of them, World Championship, factory backing, Swedish drivers, Swedish teams, Swedish manufacturer. You know, it's a massive thing. And now, obviously, they've got a little bit of a handle on where they are compared to everybody. The biggest bonus from Paul Ricard was they discovered what they hoped was that they weren't a million miles away. I'd say, great, so that's that, you know, massive relief. Okay, thank God, you know, everything we thought, actually, we weren't that far off. So now we've got to... Now the hard work begins. Now the little honeymoon is over, and so now...
You have to say they've done a very good job.
Yes.
I think the most exciting thing about the Volvo programme is because they have done a good job, and the initial car is very, very good, they've got adequate scope to develop that. And without boring everybody to death about the technical regulations, you're only allowed to change certain parts of the car once in the homologation regs. So these guys are much, much more free to develop the car than, say, Honda, for example. And therefore, I think, you know, Volvo could really spring a surprise towards the end of this season.
A little wide out of turn 2. and the Citroens don't shed any or shed 20 kilos. If they're 40 kilos closer, Hungary's not exactly fast and fluid either. That's a fairly tight and twisty track, and again, carrying that extra weight around, it's going to hurt you. You know, the same deal. If you're running along and carrying a heavy backpack, it's easier once you've got going to keep running in a straight line or gradual corners. If you're having to zigzag around things, you can imagine that extra weight takes more energy out of you to keep making those turns, and that's exactly the same with a race car.
The other thing is that you know, these teams aren't stupid. They try and play the game with the weight regulation. And I was talking to some of the guys in the engineering department at Honda yesterday, and you know, they didn't really know the pace of the race in Paul Ricard, and they knew a win was on, so they just went for it.
Yeah.
But in reality, they probably didn't need to lap as fast as they did to get the results that they did.
Yeah.
And that means that for Budapest next weekend, the likelihood is, depending on what happens this weekend, they're going to get a lot of weight added. And I'm talking like they're probably going to be second and a half off what they could do.
Which, you know, we spoke at the beginning about when somebody's tied Citroen shoelaces together, you've got to capitalise on it. But again, you, as you say, you don't want to win by too much.
No, and that is a game that everybody plays, and in the races you'll see that a lot of the drivers are almost driving to a lap time once the race is sort of squared out. But it's not going to be good for this guy. You know, his home race next weekend is Barcelona. There's so much weight in the car.
But then again, like our Nige, he always does find something special when he goes to Hungary. You know, there's so much. I mean, when we went there the first time, nobody could quite believe the intensity of it. Drivers were coming. Remember Ivan coming in and Alamin. Nige, he always does find something special when he goes to Hungary. You know, there's so much. I mean, when we went there the first time, nobody could quite believe the intensity of it. Drivers were coming. Remember Ivan coming in and Alamin. Nige, he always does find something special when he goes to Hungary. You know, there's so much. I mean, when we went there the first time, nobody could quite believe the intensity of it. Drivers were coming. Remember Ivan coming in and Alamin. Nige, he always does find something special when he goes to Hungary. You know, there's so much. I mean, when we went there the first time, nobody could quite believe the intensity of it. Drivers were coming. Remember Ivan coming. I believe for the first time ever, is just how fast the Citroens can go. I don't think they will have in any way been sandbagging, much as the team might have liked them to sort of rein themselves in a little bit and just play the game. For Muller and Lopez, getting points, it would have been the important thing. And that's the first time they've had to race cars that were faster than them.
Yeah, and I think the other, I mean, it's hard to read these practice times for what they are, but no question Citroen will have a challenging weekend. But I think one of the other big differences is car manufacturer to car manufacturer. They make different choices on the how much boost pressure they have for qualifying. That make a very big difference.
Well, let's hear from our fastest man, Fredrik Ekblom.
A fantastic start then for Polestar Steyr Racing. Fred, what's it like out there and what have you learnt?
Well, we learned a lot. We haven't been here before, so obviously yesterday was our first day. So we took advantage of it and improved the car, and I improved my driving also. So at the moment it looks good, but everybody has different agendas, so we don't really know yet.
Of course, you know, but looking ahead to this weekend, did you assume it was going to be pretty positive?
Yeah, I always do. So, well, yeah, I think the track suits our car. It's a fast track, and the car is very nice to drive. It's very stable. It's very quick on the straight. So, yeah, I hope that it would suit us, and it, apparently does.
So far, so good.
So far, so good indeed. The Volvo's first and second in the first of our 2 free practice sessions, the second of which comes up at 11:20 here, Central European time, so that's 09:20 Greenwich Mean Time. Wherever you are, you can make the conversion to your own time zone. So Volvo, Lada, all 3 factory Hondas, then the next of the Ladas, then the best of the Citroens, couple of Chevys, Tom Coronel and John Philippi getting in a good lap, ahead of Ivan Muller's Citroen, James Thompson, and then Tom Chilton, Ferenc Fischer. Ferenc Fischer on timing screens changed, not quite sure. A handful of laps quicker than Mehdi Banani's Citroen and Gregoire de Moustier's Citroen. Now, obviously, Greg is new to the car, but Mehdi isn't. Join us then for our second free practice session. As I said, 20 past 11 local time, 09:20 Greenwich Mean Time. Until then, on behalf of everybody here in Slovakia, enjoy your breakfast. Bye for now.